If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Every SEO program is setting people up for success, but I think there's some unique characteristics if you're doing it in-house or with an agency that you should be looking for that will help you now and prepare you for the future.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. In a world that's ever changing with technology, with techniques, strategies, tactics that we use to promote our brands, I think the one constant is SEO. And so, Bryan, I'm really excited to have you on the show. My guest today is Bryan Phelps, founder and CEO of Big Leap, your digital marketing agency. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your history, your background, because I saw you've done a number of different roles, SEO emphasis, right, with a few other things before you decided to take the leap into your own company.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Annika, thanks for having me on the show, and yeah, excited to talk about that. So I got started in SEO and digital marketing. I was in college at the time, but they weren't really teaching anything about digital marketing back then. It was probably about 2004 or 5. So anyway, I worked at a software company here in Silicon Slopes area of Utah, and we took data feeds from big companies, like Nordstrom's and Dick's Sporting Goods, and we used it for insurance software. It was totally unrelated to digital marketing. They would get pricing information. But I was just super curious, like, why do they provide this data? And I worked with a great guy's mentor, a friend of mine still, that kind of introduced me to SEO and digital marketing. And I just got super interested and super deep. They had published books back then that we'd read about it, blogs. Used to have an RSS reader back in the day where I'd get all the latest news from the blogs, and just started tinkering around. I've always loved to do that, and so I started building my own websites using WordPress, one of our early versions of WordPress, and I was just testing things all the time. So I was able to start driving traffic from Google and other places to that website, and then I monetized it with affiliate networks and ad networks, and I was just it was just interesting to me. I didn't know that it really had that potential, but it got to a point where I was making more doing that at nights than I was at my day job. And so I just kind of fell in love with it. And then, I ended up working in some different marketing agencies, eventually kind of spinning off and started up Big Leap, which has been, about 15 plus years ago now.
What was the subject matter for your website, or what were you offering on that website?
That's a good question. So the original one, the one that was the most successful was, again, this is going to date me a lot, but it was around HDTVs. And this was when flat screens weren't the norm necessarily. They were becoming popular. Vizio, which is a huge brand now, was brand new at the time. They kind of came in as the low price leader. So I built a lot of content around them and others. Had reviews of different TVs out there. I've always just kind of been into electronics, always been kind of a nerd. And didn't put those kind of reviews out, and there wasn't as much coverage back then around that stuff. And so, anyway, it ranked well. I was, competing out there with, the CNETs of the world, and just, driving a lot of traffic to the site. And it was fun.
Well, and I think it's so interesting that you were completely self-taught. Of course, as you said, there wasn't as much, the internet was still, and at least for consumer usage, was still fairly new. We were seeing websites, but we were, we didn't have all of the bells and whistles that we have now. We didn't realize how far it would go. So getting in early is certainly fantastic. And I'd love to hear, what was that journey like? Did you just keep tinkering and say, I'm going to try this now, I'm going to try that now to see what worked? And then that became a springboard for knowing what would work for other people.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened there was, again, just a lot of testing and figuring things out of like, okay, if I do this, and so the website ended up being, fairly large. And so I could test one section versus another and
Mhm.
really start to learn, right? Because Google, it's the secret sauce, right? Is the algorithm.
Mhm.
So they don't tell you exactly, what to do. They give you some broad kind of vague advice all the time. But when you're getting in there and actually doing it yourself and being able to test on a site like that has a lot of size and scale, you learn super fast. And so I built that site out, continued to grow, tried to replicate it with some others, and had some others did well and some that didn't do as well. But yeah, that, like you said, kind of was a springboard into other people asking for help that had businesses, e-commerce or local, service businesses. And that's kind of how Big Leap ultimately got its start. Is we had a lot of people that just heard about it and needed some help. And so I didn't start Big Leap with this grand vision of trying to build a big agency. It was just how, I'd love to help, friends and family is where it started. And then we've just grown from there.
I was going to ask because also in the early internet days, there was some advertising, but certainly not the ecosystem we have with social media and all these different platforms and all of their algorithms as well to consider. And then now we're in this world, of course, which we'll get into a little bit, where we have the AI overviews and, are they hurting or helping your traffic? And usually you have a big section of those. Then you have a lot of sponsored ads, and then maybe you get to organic. But then people are saying Google traffic is down a lot, and because people are using search through LLMs. So there's a lot to unpack here for the person who's not as familiar with this world and doesn't see all of the insights from your side of things. But before we get into that, what was it like? So you obviously had this website, you were monetizing, you were making more money from it. I was going to ask, right, how did you promote? You said you had a few friends and family that you were like, hey, I just did this thing. And then they're like, well, help me. And so that's how it grew initially. But then how did you continue your growth? Because you also went from being a solo person, right, a solo consultancy to over 80 people in your agency, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
So the first, I'd say probably what's the 3 years or so, super pretty organic. So like I said, friends and family, but then that, kind of spread. And we have an awesome business community here in Utah. It's a small town, and word gets out in a good way in this situation, I guess. But yeah, I was able to work with a lot of great companies here when people just asked, for help. So one of my early clients was a great software company that's still here in Utah and doing great things called Bamboo HR, a huge software brand. And the founder of the business at the time, they were super small, asked a friend, said, hey, I like to tell the story, who's the best SEO person you know? What he actually asked was, who's the nerdiest SEO guy you know? Well, this guy, this mutual acquaintance said, hey, you should talk to Bryan. So yeah, we spread just through reputation and doing good work. And eventually we acquired a smaller agency that was also here in Utah. And the guy that ran that agency is named Dan and still works with us today. And
Nice.
I've always been more of the operations type guy. He's a great, people partner type person. So he gets out and, kind of spreads the word a little bit more and helps kind of just build on what we've been doing.
So you bought another agency, but then now thinking you have 80 people to manage, you obviously have to have a really good team. You have to have great systems and processes. But what was it like to transition the culture of your organization from you to a few people to absorbing agency, all of their people to continuing to build?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's good. The great part is we've had our leadership team. I think there's 7 of us, and we've all been here. The youngest is probably 5+ years, and so we retain people pretty well. And so that culture, I feel like, really spreads productively in a good way. We don't have a lot of these like starts and stops with, high turnover and people coming and going a ton. And so that's helped us just kind of transition as an agency. It's kind of the typical model a little bit, right? You start as the guy doing all the work, and then you hire someone, and then, you develop these layers. But the very first person I hired, his name's Tyler Brown, still with us today. He's our head of SEO. But again, most of our leadership team has been here, like I said, at least 5 years, most longer than that. And so that's just helped kind of maintain, that our core values, kind of our root, our why, and we're able to kind of spread that, because of some good employee retention that we have.
Yeah. And What about the shift, if there has been one, in the kind of clients you serve? Because I'm sure your friends and family had varied businesses, and it can take a while to find your sweet spot.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of different theories, I guess, as an agency on specialization. And I'd say our specialization in the early days was heavy in SEO. That was my background. SEO's, changed pretty dramatically and what it means and how you do it. But just the marketing world's changed. So we've expanded a lot from a service perspective. We, of course, do paid search and social and expanding a little bit more right now with, digital PR and different things that all kind of live in that SEO and digital marketing ecosystem. But yeah, our clients have changed a lot over the years. Again, we were fortunate to kind of be born and raised here in this kind of Utah tech scene. So a lot of our early clients were these great tech companies, like I mentioned Bamboo HR and Pluralsight and Domo and Workfront, which was acquired by Adobe. A lot of great brands. But then, yeah, we've continued to grow and expand. We work with some big, Fortune 500 type businesses like Avis Car Rental and VisionWorks and some cool brands. And it's, again, for us, we're not the flashiest agency. We don't have like a big outbound team that's, knocking on doors all the time. Primarily comes from recommendations of who we work with and kind of spreads through their networks too.
Yeah, well, that's the ultimate, right? Personal recommendations, professional recommendations, speaks very highly of the work that you do.
I think so. I'm sure we could grow faster. I've worked before Big Leap at agencies that raised money and their goal is just to grow. And there's good that comes from that. But I think agencies are just people businesses, and it's hard to scale that too fast. I think it's be damaging. So, that's our preference. I think that's, like you said, alluding to, it's kind of the strongest connection you can have with those personal recommendations versus an ad or whatever that someone clicks on. So it's always our focus, our preference is trying to, do good work, and found the results follow from that.
Nice. I'd love to talk a little bit about your framework, because you have a specific framework that you use so that when you bring clients in, you know what services to employ at any one time in their strategy. Is that correct?
Yeah, but this is something that's kind of developing right now that we're building and launching a little bit, just because of how the marketing world and the app world is changing right now. So we're big believers. I call us sometimes like the anti-hype agency. So we're not big on whatever, the new thing is. Like, we pay attention to it. We want to follow it, but we try not to chase it too much. We kind of believe in the foundations of marketing at the end of the day. And so we call it brand-led performance marketing. So our focus is still performance marketing. Companies hire us because they need to grow their business. But we believe that comes through, building your brand at the same time. And that survives, whether it's SEO or Google Ads or AI or influencers or whatever. Like, we'll still utilize those channels, of course, but you're just not kind of all in on that one thing, right? And so we can kind of adapt as we go. So yeah, we go through our brand-led performance blueprint is what we call it. That's, again, we really just in the middle of developing and launching, but we go through those aspects of what's your market, who's your audience, and really trying to define that. That's a big shift for us in the last few years in terms of SEO. With less keyword focus, a little bit more focus on the audience and what they need. The messaging, so how are we communicating, of course, those audiences? And we take an angle of, we want to understand our clients' kind of unique viewpoint of their industry or of their world, and really let them be themselves, let them be genuine. And we find people, really align, to that or recognize that. And then the media mix. So if we understand, who your audience is, what your message is, that starts to inform us on how do we get that message out there? Where do those people spend time online? Where are they influenced online? Right. And from there, we can kind of create that plan to move forward.
Yeah. If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I like the fact that you are very methodical, and that you bring that, you have a very calm presence that I'm sure is very reassuring. Like you said, you don't have to be the flashy, splashy firm, as long as you're delivering what you say you're going to deliver and beyond, I'm sure, and you're consistently showing results for your clients, then that's what gives you the good word of mouth, has clients continue with you for years and years, and helps you have the time and space, I imagine, to also stay ahead of the what next, and understanding what's a trend and that's going to be a flash in the pan, right? TikTok trends, things like that companies sometimes think they need to jump on versus strategy that will last.
Right. Yeah. And I'd say who we are, kind of our core, our company purpose is building exceptional and sustainable success for our clients and our team members. And so in a world like, again, like you've said, SEO is changing a lot. There's a lot of AI, search and things like that happening, kind of regardless of the channels that come and go. That's our goal. And so that will change over time in terms of a channel, like you said, whether it's TikTok or something else. We want to be able to change and adapt and grow with that. And that's where, again, there's kind of that foundation that we talk about of your brand. Warren Buffett's talked about that as being like the biggest moat, that he looks for. And when he's looking at acquisitions. So if a strong brand's hard to put a dollar amount, it's hard to really measure, but what a big differentiator, between one company and the next when you talk about how, these shifts, right? There's companies that have been built on SEO and driving traffic. My affiliate sites were too back in the day. Right? If Google dropped, those sites, would have tanked because that was the bulk of the business, really. So we're trying to help our clients build something sustainable, something that, is multi-channel, multifaceted, and can kind of survive the ups and downs of kind of the crazy world that we live in.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about SEO as it relates, with AI, because we have the AI overviews, as we mentioned. We have, of course, advertised organizations that may show up, many, many, many of them now before you. We've heard Google traffic is down 35% because so many people are moving search to asking ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Perplexity, your favorite, insert your favorite LLM of choice for advice instead. So what are some techniques that you use and that businesses can use to combat that and to make sure that they're not just jumping into one thing because, that's the new thing that we're being told we need to do?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say, I've been, like I said, doing this for 20 plus years, and there's been lots of changes. If you go back to 2005, mobile search and usage was almost nothing. And so that was a huge change of just, we didn't used to check out on our phones. You go to your desktop to go and buy something. So it was easier back then. So yeah, there's always been these changes. And I think this shift is part of that. It's big, and it's I'd say bigger than probably all those others. Right now, Google, put out a statement just probably 2 days ago claiming that search is still growing, clicks are still growing, but I just haven't really seen any data to support that. I'm sure a lot behind the scenes that, they're trying to navigate there too. And so some things that we have seen, some positive trends, is just the intent side being a lot better. And so we've actually seen like homepage traffic growing for people that are, doing research on any AI platform or Google and looking for brands. They'll end up on that homepage, and analytics right now is just kind of a disaster. Every platform comes in looking different, whether it's direct or referral or whatever. So it's kind of a weird time on the measurement side. But if we kind of just look at it at a high level, we're seeing for a lot of brands, their key like pages, their service pages or their homepage actually growing. We're really seeing that loss and that drop in traffic that you talked about is it's on that informational side. And that's actually been going on for years. If you use Google, they've had their, answer snippets in the top that have answered quick questions for people in the past. But this is definitely a big evolution from that when you get into, ChatGPT and others too, where people are doing that kind of research. So big changes, but we also see big opportunities for all of our clients. We actually are seeing a lot of reports showing that search on Google it's decreasing, but very minimally, but the that it's growing elsewhere more than makes up for that. So search as like a whole ecosystem really is growing. And so the emphasis is not just, it used to just be for the last 10 years, it's been, how do I show up on Google? Our clients have, I don't know if anyone's ever asked us in 10 years where they show up on Bing. But now it's kind of this search everywhere, right? I want to show up here, there, Reddit, YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say Quora, Reddit.
Right now.
Yeah. So it's evolved and it's almost expanded. It's expanded exponentially. So how do you make sure that you're staying focused on the goals for the client when you're saying, right, it is a world where metrics are ever evolving. You said they're kind of a mess because of all these changes. And how do you measure what's actually coming in just from ChatGPT or from Quora or Reddit?
Yeah, which we've set up, we call it an LLM dashboard for our clients. So we're actually tracking from what is visible, what is coming in from those. And so we start with that. I think, I've mentioned AI and there's a lot of hype and buzz, and there should be because it's a big deal. But I feel like we live in this world of social media and influencers that want to take something and run with it, regardless of reality. Maybe they push it a little farther, right, to draw a little more attention. We're seeing with most of our clients still is a pretty small percentage, less than 1%, I think, on average, of their traffic coming from those tools. But there's this piece that's just not showing up, right? Where did they used to get traffic that now it's just being answered and there's no click happening.
Interesting.
So there's a term I think Rand Fishkin created called zero click marketing, essentially. And it's kind of this funny world of feeling like we're kind of going back a little bit in time where we are trying to measure from a more of a brand perspective. So showing up in those AI overviews or ChatGPT, there's value in that, and being represented. It's almost like going back to like impressions in a sense of like looking at that. So what we're doing at Big Leap, one of the big things we're changing is not just having like our singular SEO team, but adapting a little bit more to just like an organic growth, organic marketing team. So they'll be looking, of course, at search, but also, digital PR, content, other platforms, like you said, Reddit or Pinterest. But it all really starts with what I mentioned in our blueprint of where does a client's audience spend their time? And that's how we ultimately kind of prioritize and figure out where should we spend our time and focus.
Yeah.
And so we use, different tools to help us understand, if your audience are, pet moms and dads, what are the big sites? What are the big subreddits? What are the right podcasts, for those people to be included in, so we can approach those through organic methods, through advertising, different ways. And so we just really want to own kind of those digital worlds where, their ideal clients live.
Yeah. And that was a perfect segue because I was going to ask you about the role that digital PR is playing in your work with your clients and even for your own agency. I mean, you're here on this podcast, you're going to be on my other podcast.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's big. I think it has been for a long time. I feel like people have been sleeping on it for a little while.
Yeah.
SEO, I love and hate the SEO world sometimes because it kind of is attracted maybe and some negativity, right? Because there's a lot of people, it feels like this black box type world. But I'd argue the people that have been doing SEO well for the last 5+ years have had a digital PR component to that. From an SEO perspective, it's always looked at as link building essentially. And so digital PR has provided that. But where that's really shifted now when you talk about LLMs is even if a podcast or an article doesn't have a link back to you, but before an SEO, that would have been like, oh man, that's a big fail, right? That's all we care about is a link. Now just the brand visibility, the type of language used in that is something LLMs pick up on.
Oh, nice.
So I call Big Leap a digital marketing agency or Big Leap an SEO agency. That's going to show up in how, I show up in some of these different platforms. So it's definitely a big component, and it's where, all these LLMs are ultimately learning. They're learning from podcasts. They're learning from Forbes or whatever, media outlet of choice, even niche ones as well. So it's a big push for us right now.
Nice. Yeah. And as somebody who has been in the PR world, and I did have a PR agency during the pandemic, and then I do so many different things that I was like, let's shift focus a little bit. But definitely, even those small platforms, even if we got, a client on a small blog post article on some platform, you don't know who's reading it. And oftentimes we would see people reading it from other publications that are bigger. And so then they get invited from that, like Girl Talk HQ to perhaps Forbes, other big publications. And then that could even lead to TV appearances and other things. So you just never know. And I do think something interesting in the podcast world now, there's also podcast SEO, right? So how we can look up how we show up, where we're showing up, what words people are engaging with when they're searching for podcasts in our category, how high or low are we on that scale? So what can we add to our meta descriptions, keywords for our own episodes that help us, but also help our guests? So I'm just diving into that even more right now, but because I have some help. I have some teams that help with some of that, but then I'm like, I also want to completely understand it if I'm going to talk about it, if I'm going to recommend things to people.
Yeah, and that's, I think, goes back a little to what we're saying in terms of just search everywhere. Optimization. We're trying to kind of rename SEO, search everywhere. And so, yeah, you said it could be in the different, podcast platforms, App Store optimization's been a thing for a long time. And so it's kind of expanded our role in a lot of ways of, at the end of the day, whether, let's say, Google just dropped, 10% every year for the next few years, like, which could be a possibility. I personally don't think it'll necessarily be that. People are still looking for information online. They're researching products. They're researching brands. So that's how we look at it, is regardless of the platform, how do we help our clients be visible where their customers are looking for information?
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the human aspect, because you do have a large team, and we hear different sources say different things about AI is going to, first it's, you'll still have a job as long as you know how to use AI tools. Then we also hear, oh no, AI is going to replace people completely in certain job sectors and titles. And then now I saw something, Microsoft did a survey and looked through their Copilot and said, actually, the humans have one goal and they use Gen AI in a very specific way to help with a task towards that goal, but it's not taking over. So it seems like that's also a moving target of what mix do we need of human-centeredness versus having tools help take over tasks or even full jobs for us. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's a big topic. So we actually we published the goal years ago, actually. It's probably been, I don't want to misspeak there, but maybe at least a year, maybe two ago, about our AI policy, which is on our website, which has helped us, like you mentioned, with our team. It's a big team, and you've got people all over that spectrum of, I want to automate everything and write content, do video, do everything. And some people that are pretty resistant maybe to it because there are some issues and some flaws, in that world. So that policy has really helped us be clear with our team and with our clients on how we view, AI and how we use it. So we talk a lot about it being, that value adding piece, but still being human driven at the end of the day, and humans still taking responsibility for what kind of comes out of that. There's a lot of things changing right now with policy in terms of disclosure around AI, search. People have kind of went crazy really early on and just, creating tons of content automatically, and sometimes it's worked and then it's kind of tanked. So it's one of those things that's changing a ton. And so it's probably no surprise based on our conversation. Our approach has been a little more cautious. We want to use it. We want to use it the right ways, but going back to that sustainability, we want to build something that's going to last ultimately. And so we feel like there's definitely uses for us with AI now in terms of accomplishing tasks quicker, but it's for us right now not replacing people or leading out, from a real strategic perspective.
Yeah. Let's talk about it a little deeper then. I'd love to talk, because obviously the White House just released their AI action plan and wants to sell the American AI tech stack to other countries. But we also know we are United States, right? So even when we go back to consumer privacy, it's state by state. And I live in California, so we know CPRA is a little more akin to GDPR than other states' policies. But other countries have much stricter policies where, okay, if you're in Brazil, there are certain things that Meta can't do or show that they can in the United States, or maybe people can opt out of having all of their information training, Meta's AI or not. And now we have this other layer of LLMs and chat and AI, and which, how do we navigate this world and what are the policies? And again, there's a lot of state policies, and the federal one has a few things, but I don't know if it's as detailed as we need to make sure that we are moving like in a slow, methodical way that tests things out, that makes sense, that brings people along, and makes sure that we truly are using it, with intention instead of just willy-nilly. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, like you said, I think we've seen California, and I think Utah is one of the few states too that's putting forth some information about that and some policy. And so, I think it is a tricky balance. Like I don't know which way I fall on that, because there's this aspect of innovation. You don't want to overly throttle that and you don't fall behind on things like that. But this is just such a different world than cloud computing or mobile, whatever. Like those all have their things too. But when you get into the AI world, like just the things that you already hear and see about from the copycat video kind of stuff and audio. I've had neighbors get, scammed. It's like their grandma's call them saying, come bail me out. And it's her voice, her kid's voice. So it's just so much more dangerous, I think, that, I think we do need more of that, some guardrails ultimately for people, for companies. The challenge obviously is always, there are companies that, can do those things, but it's such a interesting tool, right? You can have one guy in his basement build a $1 billion company. That's the speculation, right? They'll be able to do that. So it's hard to, of course, just completely regulate it either. So I'm interested to see how, the states continue to push that. And I think what we saw with some of the privacy things is the EU led on that and California kind of led on that. A lot of companies felt like, hey, it's just, let's take that common denominator, right? And apply that, even if other states maybe don't require us at that level to restrict as much too. So I think maybe we'll end up seeing some of that.
Okay, that's fair. And I appreciate that. And I agree. Let's err on the side of caution and who has the strictest standards, because also you do have customers in those areas, or who are from those areas, you need to adhere. I think a lot of people forget that in the mix too. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think I've seen some studies and reports that talk about people's initial, right now, reaction to anything like AI generated. So I've not just content, I guess like products as well. And there's a lot of people, again, resistant to it. They say actually that's not a sales pitch for them. They would actually prefer something not, created and written by AI. Obviously, they'll change over time. People's comfort levels will change if, AI can improve, that customer service experience where you don't have to sit on hold as much. People will start to kind of come around to that. But I hope, I guess, from my perspective, that AI, can take over some of those things. And if you go way back in time, you talk about like farming and how machinery changed that and how, the internet changed jobs. I think there'll be more of that too, right? There'll be some job categories that change and maybe become less necessary. But I also think it's going to just create a lot of opportunity and jobs for people too. So I hope it allows us to do more of what we're good at, what we like doing, some of that other stuff, offer.
Fantastic. I don't know if this is going to be an easy question because there is so much change going on right now, but where do you see Big Leap going next? Do you see yourself adding more growth areas, holding steady and just helping people navigate this in-between time where we're in the midst of a new tech revolution?
Yeah, for us, it's kind of living through what we've talked about. We're adapting ourselves from our own marketing perspective. And so it comes back to that Big Leap's purpose. Our purpose doesn't talk about SEO or AI or whatever. It's about creating sustainable and exceptional results for our clients and team members. And so for us, that is adapting our marketing approach right now to kind of look at things a little bit more holistically. And it's an uphill battle. We've lived in a world where the expectation has been that you can track every person, every click, every dollar spent. I think that's changing a little bit. I think it has for a long time with privacy changes and iOS changes, but I think it's marketing's going to come back more on the art than the science side a little bit. And for us, again, it comes back to that blueprint I talked about of helping our clients create those sustainable brands, and then how can we use their brand across these channels. So that's our big focus right now, and helping our clients, navigate that. Like you said, there's a lot of interest in trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, and Bryan, you have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I just subscribed to it because I was like, oh, I want to read this article. Like, I want to read this article. So can you tell us a little bit about when you started your newsletter, the impetus behind it, and then what we will find there?
Yeah, it's I think only 6 or 7 issues in. It's pretty new. So thanks for joining and subscribing.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is to help people. So the like you said, the impetus of that was not to create, the super technical of like, here's the code behind, LLMs and the fan out query type stuff. We found that most of our clients and a lot of our audience, we work with people all over the board. We work with business owners that are, of course, interested in this and how it affects them, but they're not necessarily want to get into the weeds of every little change. We work with private equity groups that want to understand like how's this going to affect them and their portfolio and their investments. And so the goal of that newsletter is to try to, I think, summarize all the crazy stuff that's going on down there and try to just boil it down a little bit and simplify it. With, of course, my lens on that, which is excitement about AI, knowing there's opportunity there, but trying to balance that and kind of maybe filter out some of the excess hype that I think is very prevalent with that. So yeah, again, thanks for subscribing. That's I hope anybody listening, if you're interested in that level of marketing conversation, I'd love to have you join.
Yeah. So to that point, I will put your LinkedIn profile, hopefully that's okay, as a hyperlink in the show notes. So you can, introduce yourself to Bryan. If you're listening, you can subscribe to his newsletter straight from there. And of course, we'll put the website. Is there any last piece of advice that you'd like to leave with the audience if they're also confused about like, where do we go? Where do we start? Do we move? Do we get off Google, or do you still care about Google? Do we need to move more to these alternate platforms?
Yeah, I think for us that when we have clients that will pop up with those questions, or we're trying to be super proactive and answer those questions. So one of the first things I do, again, if you're just seeing a lot of the, LinkedIn posts and X and whatever, people saying Google's dead, go look in your analytics and see like, what's your traffic doing right now? Because the reality is Google's still driving the vast majority of website traffic for most brands. That said, the world's shifting and changing, so let's prepare. So let's not panic, but let's be prepared. Start preparing, for that future. Yeah. And so again, a lot of actually a LinkedIn newsletter post I was just working on this morning. We'll talk about this a little bit more about how a good SEO program is preparing you for what they're calling GEO, which is search, and what are the characteristics of a good SEO program versus the rest. Because I don't. Every SEO program is setting people up for success, but I think there's some unique characteristics if you're doing it in-house or with an agency that you should be looking for that will help you now and prepare you for the future. Fantastic.
Well, I know this is going to be helpful for me and my clients and also my students at USC. I'm looking forward to having you on the Mediascape podcast and having another conversation, seeing where we're at in another month and a half or so.
It'll be a whole new conversation. We'll
right.
See.
Exactly. And so, Bryan, I always ask my guests, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto, words that continue to inspire you?
Yeah, well, on the first one that came to mind when you said that, I don't have like quotes everywhere, so that's a good question. I have one, but there's a quote, a saying that says, by small and simple things, great things come to pass. And so that's kind of been, I think personally for me, and what shows up in Big Leap is that doing the little things consistently is what gets you these big wins. So everyone sees the big stuff. People don't see the work that goes into that, whether that's fitness, nutrition, business, family, relationships, whatever. So focusing on sometimes the small, the simple, the fundamentals is necessary to see the big wins in the end.
100% with everything. Those little changes, right? Just get a little better every day. Just make little changes. And that's when you see the results. So could not agree with you more.
Awesome.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on Your Brand Amplified. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Hamilton.
Thank you to everybody who's also watching this episode or listening to it. Back again with another amazing guest to share their story, their journey. But if you are as confused about SEO as many of us and want to really understand what's true, what's hype, and what we can do to prepare ourselves for the future, Bryan Phelps and Big Leap could be a great place for you to go. With that, I'll see you again very soon. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.